Have you ever felt tired, but not from doing too much? Tired from thinking, from overanalyzing, from replaying the same conversations in your head, from wanting more, but doing the same. You wake up, you scroll, you work, you distract yourself. You tell yourself you'll start tomorrow. And somewhere in the quiet moments there's this whisper, this can't be it. But then another voice shows up. The safer one, the practical one, the one that sounds like logic. Relax, you're fine, don't risk it. And just like that, you stay. Not because you're lazy, not because you're incapable, because you're comfortable. And here's the part that stings. Comfort can feel like peace, but it's often just fear wearing soft clothes. Be honest, does that feel familiar? You don't hate your life, you just don't feel fully alive in it. There's a difference. You've adjusted, you've adapted, you've made things good enough. But there's a quiet tension under the surface, like you're meant for something slightly bigger, but you keep negotiating with smaller. And this is where the real story begins. Not with some dramatic breakdown, not with a life-altering disaster. It starts with a subtle awareness. Something's off. You can feel it when you see someone take a risk, when someone quits the job, starts the business, moves to the city, ends the relationship, speaks their truth. Part of you admires them. Another part of you immediately lists all the reasons you never would. And that's when it hits you. You're not stuck because life trapped you. You're stuck because comfort did. Now wait. Before you roll your eyes and say, yeah, I've heard this before. This isn't about quitting your job tomorrow, or moving across the country, or becoming someone else overnight. This is about something quieter. The invisible boundary you've built around your potential. Most people think their comfort zone is about situations. It's not. It's about identity. You've gotten comfortable being the cautious one, the reliable one, the overthinker, the I'll try later person. And changing your life means changing who you believe you are. That's the part nobody warns you about. Growth isn't uncomfortable because it's hard. It's uncomfortable because it threatens the story you've been telling yourself. Who are you without the excuses, without the safety nets, without the familiar patterns? That question alone can make your chest tighten. So what do? You distract yourself. You optimize small things. You improve 1%. You watch motivational videos. And yet, nothing really shifts. Why do we keep doing this even when we know better? Here's the truth most people don't want to admit. Comfort isn't just about ease. It's about control. Inside your comfort zone, you know the rules. You know the outcomes. You know how people see you. Outside of it, uncertainty, judgment, possible failure, possible rejection. Your brain hates that. It would rather you be predictably dissatisfied than unpredictably fulfilled. Read that again in your mind. Predictably dissatisfied, or unpredictably fulfilled. Which one have you been choosing? And don't answer quickly. Think about your last big decision. Did you choose expansion, or did you choose safety? I used to think I was just being realistic, that I wasn't built for big moves, that some people are just wired for boldness. But here's where it gets real. Your comfort zone isn't protecting you from failure, it's protecting you from growth. And growth feels like loss at first. Loss of identity, loss of certainty, loss of being the version of you everyone expects. That's why you hesitate. Not because you can't handle success, but because you don't yet know how to handle becoming someone new. And that's terrifying. This next part changes everything. The discomfort you're avoiding, that tension in your chest, that urge to shrink back, it's not a warning sign. It's a doorway. But here's the twist. Most people never walk through it. Not because they're incapable, because they misinterpret the signal. They feel fear and assume it means stop. What if it actually means go? Sit with that for a second. What if the very emotion you've been running from is the compass pointing you forward? What if fear isn't the enemy? What if it's the invitation? Because think about it. You don't feel fear when you're scrolling mindlessly. You don't feel it when you're repeating old routines. You don't feel it when you're playing small. Fear only shows up at the edge, at the boundary between who you are and who you could become. But here's where it gets tricky. Your brain doesn't know the difference between danger and discomfort. To your nervous system, sending that risky text, starting that project, speaking up in that meeting, feels almost the same as stepping into traffic, so it reacts the same way. Stop, retreat, avoid. And if you've been avoiding long enough, it starts to feel normal. You even build a personality around it. I'm just not that type of person. I like stability. I don't need much. That sounds mature, right? But sometimes it's just fear in a business suit. Here's a quiet question. Are you actually content, or have you just trained yourself not to want more? That one's uncomfortable, because wanting more means risking more. And risking more means you might fail. But let me tell you something nobody says clearly enough. Failure inside your comfort zone is slow. Failure outside your comfort zone is loud. And loud failure feels worse. So you choose the slow one. The one where years pass. Where potential fades quietly. Where regret grows in the background like static noise. You don't notice it at first. Then one day you wake up and think, why do I feel behind? Behind who? That's the ironic part. You're comparing yourself to versions of you that never existed, because you never gave them a chance. Be honest. How many ideas have you talked yourself out of? How many times have you said, it's not the right time? How many right times have already passed? Type A if you've delayed something important. Type B if you've already started stepping forward. No pressure, just notice your instinct. Now here's where things shift. Leaving your comfort zone doesn't start with massive action. It starts with redefining discomfort. Right now, you interpret discomfort as danger. What if you started interpreting it as expansion? Same feeling, different meaning. That presentation that makes your stomach twist? Expansion. That conversation you've been avoiding? Expansion. That creative idea you're scared to post? Expansion. Your body shakes. Your thoughts spiral. Your mind screams, abort! And instead of running, you stay. Just a little longer. That's the move, not a leap, a step. Most people think transformation requires a dramatic decision, but real growth is almost boring. It's choosing the uncomfortable option in small, consistent ways. It's sending the email, having the talk, waking up earlier, trying again. And at first, nothing changes. You don't feel braver. You don't feel different. You still feel scared. This is the part where most people quit, because they expect fear to disappear. It doesn't. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's familiarity with it. The more often you step into discomfort, the more your brain updates its definition of safe. You literally rewire what feels normal. Read that slowly. You can train your nervous system to see growth as safe. But here's the emotional catch. The first few steps will feel unnatural, like you're pretending, like you're being fake, like you're trying to be someone you're not. And that's when the old voice shows up. Who do you think you are? That voice sounds protective, but it's just defending the old identity, the comfortable one. Let me ask you something quietly. If you weren't afraid of being judged, who would you be right now? Pause there. Not who should you be, not who would impress people. Who would you actually be? This next realization hits hard. You don't lack confidence. You lack evidence. You haven't given yourself enough proof that you can survive discomfort, because every time you almost step forward, you retreat. So your brain says, see, we can't handle that. But you've never actually tested it fully. And here's where it gets real. The comfort zone shrinks your world slowly. It makes you overthink small things. It makes you anxious about tiny risks. It convinces you that safe equals smart. But safe isn't always smart. Sometimes safe is just familiar, and familiar isn't the same as fulfilling. If this is starting to click, say something. Even just, I feel this. Because the next shift, it's about identity. And that's where everything changes. Here's the part nobody prepares you for. Leaving your comfort zone isn't about changing what you do, it's about changing who you believe you are. And identity is sticky. You've spent years building it, protecting it, explaining it. I'm not the outgoing one. I'm not the risk taker. I'm not creative. I'm just anxious. The more you repeat those lines, the more your brain treats them like facts. But they were never facts. They were coping strategies. And that realization? It's uncomfortable. Because if they're not facts, then what else have you accepted about yourself that isn't true? Think about it. When you were younger, you probably tried things without overthinking. You raised your hand. You asked the question. You ran toward things that excited you. Somewhere along the way, you learned caution. Maybe you failed publicly. Maybe someone laughed. Maybe you were told to be realistic. So you adjusted. You shrank a little, then a little more. And eventually, the smaller version of you felt normal. This next part changes everything. You are not afraid of leaving your comfort zone. You are afraid of losing your current identity. Because if you step out, you can't keep saying, I'm just not that kind of person. You'd have to admit you are. And that means responsibility. That means expectation. That means growth becomes your choice, not your fantasy. That's heavy. So instead, you stay in potential. Potential is safe. It feels promising. It doesn't require proof. But potential without action slowly turns into regret. Here's a quiet confession. Most people aren't scared of failing. They're scared of succeeding and having to maintain it. Because success changes how people see you and how you see yourself. And growth demands consistency. So you tell yourself you're waiting for confidence. But confidence doesn't come first. Evidence does. You act, you survive, you learn. Then confidence shows up as a side effect, not before. Let me ask you something that might sting a little. Are you addicted to the idea of becoming more than the act of becoming? There's a difference. One feels inspiring, the other feels uncomfortable. Which one have you been choosing? And this is where the guide, the idea behind this entire journey, steps in. Leaving your comfort zone isn't about reckless leaps. It's about controlled exposure. Just like building muscle. You don't walk into a gym and lift the heaviest weight on day one. You stress the muscle slightly. You recover. You repeat. Your identity works the same way. You stress it slightly. You do one thing the old you wouldn't do. Maybe you speak up. Maybe you apply. Maybe you create. Maybe you set a boundary. Your heart races. Your mind panics. And then, nothing catastrophic happens. That moment, that's gold, because your brain just collected new data. Wait, we did that, and we're still alive. That's how identity shifts, not with affirmations, with evidence. But here's where it gets real again. The people around you may resist your growth, not because they hate you, because your change disrupts their comfort. When you play small, everyone feels stable. When you expand, it forces reflection. And not everyone wants that. So they might joke, doubt, question, and you'll feel the pull to shrink back, to make them comfortable again. This is the emotional test. Do you choose their comfort or your expansion? Be honest. Have you ever downplayed yourself to avoid making others uncomfortable? Most people won't admit that part. Growth sometimes feels lonely, not because you're alone, but because you're stepping into unfamiliar territory, and unfamiliar feels isolating at first. But here's the shift. Every time you choose discomfort on purpose, you build self-trust.
And self-trust is the foundation of everything. Without it, you overthink, you hesitate, you doubt. With it, you move. Not perfectly, but decisively. This next part might be the most important. Your comfort zone isn't your enemy. It's your starting point. You don't destroy it. You expand it. Gradually, intentionally, relentlessly. And when you look back months from now, what once terrified you will feel normal. That's how transformation actually works.
Now here's where everything comes together. You've been waiting for a moment, a breakthrough, a surge of motivation, a clear sign. But growth doesn't usually arrive like lightning. It shows up as a quiet decision, a decision that says, I'm done negotiating with fear. Not eliminating it, not conquering it, just not letting it vote anymore. Because here's the truth that changes everything. Fear will always have an opinion. It will tell you you're not ready, that you're behind, that you'll embarrass yourself, that people will judge you, that you'll fail. And sometimes, you might. But the real cost isn't failure. It's stagnation. Stagnation is subtle. It doesn't hurt immediately. It just slowly drains color from your life. You wake up, you scroll, you work, you distract, you sleep, and repeat. There's no disaster, just dullness. And dullness is dangerous because it convinces you this is just how life is. But you know that's not true. You felt it before, that spark, that version of you that wanted more, that believed more was possible. They're still there. They're just buried under comfort. Here's a question that might shake something loose. If nothing changed for the next 5 years, how would you feel? Not logically, emotionally. Sit with that for a second. That tightness in your chest, that's not anxiety. That's awareness. And awareness is the beginning of transformation. But this next part is critical. Leaving your comfort zone doesn't mean blowing up your life. It means choosing growth in small, daily moments. It's saying yes when you'd usually say maybe. It's speaking when you'd usually stay silent. It's trying when you'd usually plan. It's finishing when you'd usually quit. It's subtle, but subtle, repeated consistently, becomes powerful. Here's the irony. The discomfort you're avoiding right now, it's temporary. The regret of staying stuck, that lingers. So you have to choose your discomfort. Short-term discomfort of growth or long-term discomfort of stagnation. Which one are you living with right now? The pain of effort or the pain of avoidance? Don't overthink it. Just notice your instinct. And here's the final shift. You don't become confident and then act. You act and become confident. You don't find clarity and then move. You move and clarity finds you. Action creates identity, not the other way around. So maybe the real reason it's time to leave your comfort zone isn't because you're failing. It's because you're ready. Ready to stop shrinking, ready to stop waiting, ready to stop explaining away your own potential. You don't need to transform overnight. You just need to prove to yourself once that you can step forward and survive it. Then do it again and again until the person who once felt stuck feels unstoppable. Not because life got easier, but because you got stronger. And one day, you'll look back at this version of you, the one hesitating, the one doubting, the one waiting for permission, and you'll feel compassion. Because they didn't know yet. They didn't know that discomfort was the doorway, that fear was the signal, that growth was available the whole time. But you know now. So here's the only question that matters. What's one uncomfortable action you've been avoiding that you could take this week? Not someday. This week. Hold that in your mind. Because this is your call to adventure. Not dramatic, not loud, just intentional. And if this hit somewhere deeper than motivation, if it felt like recognition, don't just scroll past it. Stay with it. Subscribe. And start choosing the version of you that's waiting on the other side of discomfort.